Hello, viewer. Welcome in, and thank you for watching this recording of You're Already Done. Accelerate Your Art with Apfel Sky. This was a panel that I performed at Another Furry Convention 2025, shortly to be renamed to Anthro SoCal. And this recording was done in post because, unfortunately, I forgot to record until a couple slides into the presentation. So for anybody who is watching the video, this is for you. So what was this panel? What in the heck is this panel? The panel was about working faster, understanding the process, building confidence, learning how to learn, being cool and based actually, and drawing faster, and especially being cool and based actually. So, who the heck are you? Who the heck am I? This is where we will get back into that recording from the presentation. Please enjoy, and I hope you learned something. I forgot to click start recording, but we pressed start recording. So yes, hopefully I will have the VOD, if you will, of this panel for later. So if you guys have to take off and you want to follow me on socials, I will hopefully post it so that you guys can find it on YouTube, assuming that the recording actually works. So I'm a freelance illustrator. I've been doing what I would consider actual freelance professional illustration. That is to say, I have received money for art for roughly 13 years, just a little over that. My actual day job, I do technical animation, so that's putting bones in 3D models to let the animators actually animate the 3D models. So not 100% crossover with drawing, but it does come into play a surprising amount how many similar things you have to deal with in those fields. I'm also a dragon. I'm a red panda dragon hybrid. That's Sky. That's my persona. He's up on the screen there. I really like teaching people art. That is something I do regularly. I stream on Twitch occasionally. I stream on Picardo occasionally as well. I'm also cringe. And as you guys can see in the lower slide, hopefully you guys are cringe too. You're all here to learn about art. You want to draw, or you like looking at art and I'm forcing you to draw anyway. Either of those is fine. Exactly. Exactly.
Don't kill the part of you that is cringe. Kill the part that cringes. Yes.
All right. There we go. Okay, disclaimers. I am not an expert. I am a professional, but I am not an expert. I want to make sure that I categorize those differently. I'm not somebody who has spent my entire life studying this. I don't have like a PhD in art. I'm just a guy who draws a lot. Art is not a one-size-fits-all thing. So I'm going to talk about a lot of like processes and a lot of like mental workflows and ways to view situations that might not work for you. Hopefully they do. They have certainly helped me, but art is a category that goes beyond just drawing. So I want to make sure that I am clear that this panel will hopefully work for many people, but it won't work for everybody. I'm also an adult. I imagine that there is probably a non-zero number of people in here, because this is an all-ages con, who are below 18. Just a heads up, I'm going to do my best to make sure that this panel stays PG and use appropriate language, but I am an adult, so I may slip up. Speaking of, this is my very first panel, so thank you guys all for being here. So yes, there will be mistakes. This is basically a first draft. I did work my best on it, but it is the first time that I'm doing this. So also please save questions until the end unless you feel that they are urgent or they're about clarification about something that I'm actively doing. This panel is going to go really quickly. I know that it's a 2-hour panel, but as you can imagine, if any of you have been in school, 2 hours does not help you learn everything. So we're going to go relatively fast. If I need to slow down for any reason, let me know. But for the most part, most of the questions that show up on the slides will be rhetorical, and then I will answer them promptly. Also, please respect the people around you. There are people of all sorts of drawing skill in this room. We are here to learn, so do not put yourself down. Do not do backhanded compliments to other people like, oh my gosh, your stuff is so much better than mine. We're not here for that. We are here to learn, all of us, and we're here to have a good time. So please make sure that you're respecting everybody next to you. Now, for the cool gimmick and why I have all of this crap in front of me. Wow, look at that. I have a camera. You guys can actually see what I'm drawing. This was mildly a pain to set up, but it is pretty cool. I don't know how to use any of the... Again, I draw and I work on games. I don't know how to do cool video production stuff, but I figured it out. So we are going to do our first thing. Everybody get your papers ready. I'm going to make you write a self-affirmation. We are going to write, I am so cool. in all caps. And I do not care how you are feeling today. Hopefully you're feeling good because it is Sunday. We had a good con. I imagine a lot of you stayed up very late, which means that maybe you don't feel so cool right now. But you do feel so cool right now because you're writing that down anyway. So let me write it down as well. Boom. All caps. Oh, that totally is upside down. Hold on. Transform. Flip vertical. There we go. Oh my gosh. Let's go. Thank you guys. Oh, now you guys can't see it. Perfect. It's okay. Yippee, there we go. And I know that that is a rough angle. I apologize. This is not the same as my monitor at home. This is a random selfie stick. All right, and now I click back on PowerPoint. Where the heck is the cursor? There we go. So, how do I become the speed fast as hecky? 1, confidence. You guys probably saw this in the description. If you looked at the description, I know that the description was not in the pamphlet, but we're going to talk about confidence a lot. 2, knowledge and understanding. Makes you faster. That's crazy, I know. Knowledge. And then technique and application, so how you actually use whatever medium it is that you're using to draw. None of these are mutually exclusive. You need knowledge in order to have better technique. You need confidence in order to gain that knowledge. So keep in mind, I'm not doing this in a super linear fashion. These are all topics that will apply with each other. But Sky, you say, I can't even draw a stick figure. I don't know how to start. That's crazy, because you already drew a stick figure. Remember that self-affirmation we did? If you guys look at those shapes, what is an O? It's just a circle. I want everybody to follow along. We're going to draw another circle. Wow, that's so cool. And then the letter I has a straight line in it. We're going to draw a straight line down from that circle. And then the letter A has 2 diagonal lines, and it has a little cross brace if you want to make them wear a skirt. That's so cool. And then we can do another line here. And look at that, we have a person. Oh my gosh, and there was an S. We can draw a little S coming out of the center. And now you've got a tail. And the L, oh, that's a couple other diagonal lines. We can do those up here. Look at that, you guys drew a furry character at a furry convention. That's so cool. So I want to be clear. Never let anybody tell you that they cannot draw a stick figure if they are literate. Because they already are drawing. That's the cool thing about language, is it's just a bunch of characters that we put together, but those characters are just drawings that somebody did forever ago. Especially if you look at like East Asian languages, a lot of those have like kanji. Those are just drawings that got simplified into more categorizable shapes. But Sky, you say, I already know how to draw. Can we skip all this? No, shush. Fundamentals are important for everyone. The cool thing about being good at art is it means that you can do the basic stuff still too. You don't have to just do the hard stuff all the time. So we are going to go over what are the fundamentals. I have separated these into 3 categories. Beginner is line, shape, and color. As you can see, I have very limited color today, so we don't even have to worry about that one. Line, we just did that. And we also did a couple shapes too. We did a circle, we did a triangle, square is the other simple shape, and then you can just add more sides if you want. But you know what else is a shape? This is also a shape, because a shape is just a closed line. And then we have intermediate. So this is considered intermediate for me because this is the first time that you start thinking about depth, thinking about 3 dimensions, thinking about the way that things are shaped. So that's form, which is like, okay, how do you draw something that's in front of another thing? How do you draw something that looks round? And And then also value. So like making something be in shadow is a great way to show that it is three-dimensional, because that means that there has to be a shadow somewhere. And then advanced, which we're not going to touch on a ton today, but the reason I consider this advanced is because they're not required for drawing. You do not need to know anatomy, perspective, or composition in order to draw. They are useful tools for getting better at drawing or to make illustrations that look pretty, but they are not required for just doing it, right? But anatomy, I also want to clarify, is not just human anatomy, right? Like obviously we've got our bones and muscles and everything else, but a tree, you can think of the anatomy of a tree as like a trunk and the branches and the leaves. It's just how things are put together. So like the beams in a house could be a form of anatomy. So I want you guys to also take away that we are going to do some character illustration today, but this applies to most things. As like if you're willing to think about a tree as a character, you can do a lot of the same like mental maths of, okay, what has this tree been through, right? And a few of you have probably been to similar panels where we talk about like treating a setting as a character. Somebody has lived in it, somebody has interacted with it. So that also gets into perspective, right? Perspective goes hand in hand with anatomy because it's how things move further away from our eyes and look three-dimensional. But perspective is more complicated than just thinking about something as 3D. You can draw a ball without thinking of how small or how large the ball is relative to something around it. And then composition is just how things are laid out on the paper. Does this look composed? No, it's just my scribbles from making sure you guys in the back can actually see what I'm drawing. So we're, again, not worrying about that today. That's cool. Get to the point. We're going to draw an apple. And thankfully, I've got some reference available. We've got a beautiful little apple tree branch right there. That's kind of complicated though, right? That's like 3 different apples. We'll bring it down to just one. But that one still has like depth of field and branches and leaves, everything. We're gonna draw just an apple, okay? So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes and I'm going to join you guys and we are just going to draw an apple. So we'll get started in 3, 2, 1, go. And keep in mind, this is the first thing that we are drawing from reference right now, so we are not actually worrying right now about if our apple looks good, right? You promise? You promise you guys aren't going to think about that? You can see I'm not even drawing the same apple. What the heck am I doing? All right, cool. Hopefully that was 2 minutes. I should actually use my phone as a timer. That would be crazy. All right, cool. We drew an apple. Yippee! It's probably terrible. It's probably super bad, right? My apple sucks. You can tell that I'm nervous because I wasn't even looking at the reference. That and also the OBS window is in the way. I want to be clear. I can't see half of the slides. But also, wow, we drew an apple. It wasn't very good, was it? Unless you think you're really good at drawing apples for some reason. That's very specific. But you know what we're going to do now? We're going to draw an apple. Again. Yippee! So everybody, just go to the white space next to the apple that you just drew. Draw another apple. Right now. And I'm even going to put this on the screen. We're going to do 2 minutes. Let's go. And I hope you guys are drawing your apples and not watching me draw mine. Got my eye on you. Actually, I don't. I'm looking at my apple. Ooh, and Core was nice enough to give me some colors. I'm going to put some red on mine. You guys don't get to do that unless you brought your own supplies? That's crazy. It is. Art is definitely pay to win. That's why I gave you guys ballpoint pens. And I'm realizing now I gave you guys way less than 2 minutes last time. That's crazy. Yeah, let's go. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're done. We're done drawing an apple. Yippee. Okay. As you guys can see, that's my current vocal quirk is yippee. So, what did we just do? First, we used reference. Isn't that cool? We had a picture of an apple up on the screen, and you can see that this is not something I'm consistently good at doing because I didn't even look at the own I brought a reference for you guys and didn't even use it. But we did have it on screen available to look at whenever, and we used it to ingest knowledge and information about an apple to figure out the anatomy of an apple. And what was the anatomy? It was basically just a ball with a stick pointing out of it, right? We focused in on the subject. We didn't worry about the tree. We didn't worry about depth of field. We didn't worry about the leaves. We just worried about the apple, the thing that we wanted to draw. And we did a mediocre job. And then we did it again. Isn't that cool? And you'll notice, hopefully that is part of this. Oh my gosh, did I accidentally click on something again? Hopefully we had fun. Yeah. Did we have fun? Yeah. Yay. But it's time to actually go fast. What is fast? And what makes us fast? What the heck? Sorry, I'm realizing that my palm is touching the trackpad, and it's like, whoa, it's time to go. Yes, clearly I'm going way too fast. Way past cool. So what actually makes us fast is confidence. Again, we're going to talk about that a lot. It's also actually learning technique. So for example, we just learned how to use reference, but we also, you guys will have noticed, didn't use reference the second time. But hopefully you guys were still able to draw something that looks like an apple because you retained some amount of information from that first time that you looked at the image and drew it, right? So we're building that muscle memory, we're building that technique. We're also generating ideas. In this case, I generated an idea for you. I gave you guys an apple to draw. But it's also about iteration and repetition. So again, doing things more than once. So this gets into just do it. The advice that I'm sure everybody has heard, and probably a lot of people like myself have mixed feelings about. I cannot stand this advice for art specifically. I think that it does artists a little bit dirty, especially when you are trying to learn. So why? It turns art into a chore. Because that just do it advice, it turns it away from the act of drawing. Like you're now not worried about what it is that you're drawing or what your goal is that you want to accomplish. You just want to draw. Like that becomes the goal, is like, did I perform the act of drawing? Which means that if you didn't draw, now you feel like a failure, even though that wasn't the point to begin with, right? Because it also ignores why you want to draw in the first place. Chances are you don't just want to draw for the sake of drawing, for the sake of moving your arm on a piece of paper. Chances are you have a character that you want to illustrate or a scene that you want to lay out. Even outside of stuff like art, if it's music, like, okay, just compose a song, forehead, right? Like, unless you already have some amount of baseline knowledge, it's very hard to know exactly what starting looks like and what just doing it means. It also doesn't tell you how. Like I said, like if you don't know what it is that you actually need to do to get better, if you don't know what it is that you want to draw, just do it doesn't do anything for you because now you're just sitting there thinking about what does that mean. So what we actually need is real confidence. That's right, confidence. Again, so what is confidence? And this is actually where I'm going to draw your personas. Yippee! So, free fan art. Go ahead. I want 3 people to raise their hand. That's fine. I'm going to select 3 people. So we will select you, you, and all the way in the back. Yes. Go ahead and bring, if you guys have your badges, bring those up to me. And I mean character badges or references. Whatever. If you have a reference on hand, that is fine. Oh. That's a granola bar. That is not what I wanted. There we go. Ugh. All right, go ahead, set that there. So this is something that I started doing because I realized like business cards are a little fickle. You have art on them that may not be your current art. They may not even have URLs that are up to date. So what I started doing is I started doing these silly little business card shaped pieces of craft paper and just drawing people's characters on one side of it and using that as a business card. And it turns out that that works really, really well for some situations and really, really questionable for others, including when you have consumed a lot of substances at a convention, especially alcohol. But that also means that usually while you are doing these, they get to watch you draw them, which is not something that you usually get to do. I have the benefit of having worked as a caricature artist, actually. I did that for one summer at a local theme park back in Denver. That was the worst job ever. Do not do caricature drawing unless you have stable income. Because I was paid 20% commission with no wage. So for every $10 drawing I did, I got $2 out of it. But you know what? It did teach me how to draw very quickly because I needed to maximize how much money I actually wanted to make. And then we are at AFC 25. Yippee. Okay, there is yours. Next.
Quick question.
Yes.
You'll go first, but do you want the cute or the creepy one?
That's fine. I don't. Either one's fine. Thank you. And we get to draw a cool bird. And the other nice thing about doing these is I have gotten to see so many different character species, character sizes. As you can see, I am doing a panel right now, which means that I also don't have the luxury of like redoing these if I think that they are kind of askew or off the side of the paper or whatever. So we are going to have most of the beak just off the side. That's fine. Because we still get to draw the character with the cool goggles. I have a goggles bias, by the way, so this is great. Have I drawn goggles on either of my characters? No. Do I like them? Yes. Cool. There's that one.
Means you need more characters. Means you need more characters.
The camera?
Pull that part to the camera.
Oh, yes. There you go. Hopefully you guys can see it. I don't know how the focus is on this guy. Yippee. I'm going to say that a lot. I'm sorry. Oh, yes. There we go. I forgot it's upside down. There we go. Cool. There's yours. Oh, did I put the convention on the back? Let me make sure that I do that. AFC 25. Here you go. Oh, very cool. All right. One more card. And as you can see, like these are taking me what, maybe 30 seconds a minute, 2 minutes at most, which is really, really good for conventions because, as you can imagine, people have places to be. Chances are when you ran into your friend who is introducing you to somebody that you've never met before, it's because they're running off to go get food or to go to a panel or to like shop in Dealer's Den before it closes because it's Sunday and it's only open until 5 today. And that's all stuff that you have to keep in mind when you are giving cards out to people. And one of the funniest interactions I had was with somebody who makes YouTube videos. And they were like, I have to go to dinner. My friends are waiting for me. I can't wait for you to draw something. And I was like, it'll literally take me 30 seconds. And they were like, I don't really believe you. I need to go to dinner with my friends right now. And they were worried that I was doing a parasocial relationship thing. And then I turned around, and it turns out that all of their friends are mutuals with me. And I was like, no, you are waiting. I'm going to draw this for you. And then they were shocked because I was actually done with it within like, a relatively short amount of time. I'm assuming that that is the tail, so we are going to have that wrap around there. Any markings that I am missing? This side of the face is darker. There we go.
You need to restart recording.
I did press start recording. Thank you. Oh, did the camera rotation explode again? Thank you for letting me know. Transform. Rotate 180 degrees. Move over there. There we go. All right, and everybody can see clearly, everybody can hear clearly. We're back to where we were before. Cool. All right, and then I want this to be you. Always on top. All right, cool. I did some cool fan art for folks. Isn't that neat? On my little business cards. In fact, as you guys probably overheard, I took a picture. Let me get that open so that you guys can see the other one that I drew, even though there's a nice big shadow in the middle of my photo. There it is. Wow. So what is confidence then? It's anime protagonist energy. And what do I mean by that? As you guys saw, most of those sketches were done very quickly with very little time. They cannot be good. I only have a minute. So what is actually important for me with those business cards is just making sure that I actually capture some amount of that character's detail, because these are characters that people are, they're very personal. They're also very important to that person. And you want to make sure that you're actually capturing the details that that person cares about. I had somebody who I was like, yeah, let me do a 30-second drawing of your character. And they were like, wow, you're the first person in 2 years who actually drew my character's piercings in a 30-second doodle. Because that's the thing, is it's very, very easy to overlook the small details, right? But the important thing is that you care about other people. That's crazy, believing in the power of friendship. Because the thing is that artists and people who consume art, we are all part of like a social collective. We interact with each other, we inspire each other. There's nothing that we really do in a void. The other kind of anime protagonist thing about getting better at art and getting faster at art is knowing that you're going to be bad and doing it anyway. And that's different than saying just do it. Because just do it implies that you just have to do it regardless of what your skill level is. But no, when you think of anime protagonists, like let's say Naruto or Luffy or Ash Ketchum or whoever, generally speaking, they have a goal in mind. but they know that that goal is hard, right? They know that it's going to take time and energy and resources and training. There's a reason why there are so many training montages in anime. It's because you do actually have to practice in order to achieve your goal, but you also have to believe that you can achieve that goal. That is what I want you guys to take away from this panel more than anything, is that you guys have already drawn stuff today, right? We already drew apples. We already did a self-affirmation. We already drew a character. So you guys have already done it, right? You don't have to just do it. You already started. And that's one of the really cool things about recognizing your own innate ability, is it doesn't mean that there won't be hardships or challenges or whatever. Like, obviously current socioeconomic climate does not encourage those things. But the important thing is that you can believe that you are capable of it, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of how quickly you get there, regardless of if you run into the boss from chapter 5 or season 4 or whatever, who like takes your arm off and now you have one less arm and you still have to try and accomplish your goal anyway, right? So that's why I like to think of this as anime protagonist energy, because it's believing that you are capable of doing it, believing in the people around you to encourage you and to help you along the way. You don't have to be the perfect swordsman. You can be friends with the perfect swordsman, but you may let like that knowledge rub off on you, and now you know some amount of sword skills or how to deal with a sword, right? So again, like, also recognizing your own flaws, your own faults, but knowing that that's not necessarily a barrier as much as it is an obstacle that you can get over. So before we continue, I want to look at some common pitfalls about things that do slow us down in our process. And these I'm going over now so that when we do go to a couple more of the drawing examples later, you guys have like an idea of what to keep in mind. So, hyperfixation. Favorite word among neurodivergent people. Hyperfixation is, like, in summary, if you guys have ever seen those examples where somebody draws one really, really pretty eye and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the most gorgeous eye that I've ever drawn, but I'm drawing it in my sketchbook at school and it's not on a pretty piece of paper and I'll never be able to see it again. Oh, I need to draw the one on the left side. Oh no, it doesn't look as good, right? Because you focused so much of your energy in one spot that it became hard to view the thing as a whole. So I want to make sure that that is just something that you guys keep in mind, is that it's okay to hyperfixate when you are putting in details, but speed does not require details. That is another weird kind of quirky thing about going faster, is that, like, you don't have to draw the perfect thing the first time. You can still do under sketches and everything else. But the more that you focus on that one piece that you're a little bit worried about, the harder it's going to be to get the rest of the sketch in place so that you can then focus in on those details when you're actually happy with everything around it. The next one is outlines versus forms. This is something that I have called out several of my friends on, and it's very funny because they're usually better at drawing that stuff than I am. But let's say that you want to draw big pecs because you really like big pecs. A lot of people will draw big pecs like this. And then they'll draw abs like this. And they know where all of the muscles go because they've looked at muscles a lot. They've looked at reference. But this does not look particularly three-dimensional, right? Because I am closing those forms. I'm only thinking about the outline of where that object is in space. Whereas if we are to like think about overlaps or like where there's transitions between light and dark, like we can draw something that has a little bit more form. And it's the same placement of everything, but it feels more three-dimensional. And I know some of that is because I'm doing hatching and I'm hiding all of the secrets from you. The parts that don't look as good are kind of being hidden away by sketches. But the point is that when I'm thinking about something like the pec, I'm not thinking, oh, that's the pec, right? This gets into the weeds of like knowledge and understanding. but I've studied a little bit of anatomy. I had the benefit of doing that in college. And so I know from experience that pecs attach on your sternum in the middle of your chest. That's crazy. You can feel that if you want to. Please don't feel yourself up in my panel. But they also connect on the arm, and they connect underneath the shoulder muscle. So when you're thinking about like how things overlap with each other, it's a lot easier for you to figure out where they need to go because you're less worried about what the final product is going to be and thinking more about what the thing is that you're actually drawing. And those are two very different things. I like to call out especially my friends who write in East Asian languages, because the thing about writing in East Asian languages is you kind of have to just write the character correctly the first time, and it is a drawing, which means that for better or worse, my friends who write those languages are the ones that are most likely to be like, oh, I can just draw the thing. I don't have to do an undersketch at all. And to be clear, there are some people that are incredibly good at that. But the important thing is that you're still thinking about that underlying anatomy, where those things are actually going, how you structure those things in front of or on top of each other. So another thing, just to make sure that you guys are keeping that in mind as we're going through the presentation. We also have not deleting your art often enough. Would you like to restart? Game over. And this does not mean literally deleting your art. I want to be clear. This is specifically about making sure that when something is bad or is not up to your expectations, that you are not hyperfixating on it. You're not like, I can fix her. Because chances are it's going to be easier to restart than it is to futz with the same sketch for 30 minutes straight. So a lot of times when people think that they're slow, it's not that they're actually slow. It's that they already did the thing, but now they're spending an hour fixing it. And this is like one of those things that is very difficult to learn in practice, right? Because we want our first sketch to be the one that we move forward with very frequently. And I definitely fall for that too. But the way that I tend to get around this is I do take notes. So for example, during this panel, if you guys hear me talk about something that's really helpful or that you kind of want to figure out for yourself, or you just have an easier time understanding spoken word dialogue while you are physically engaging with something else with your hands, that is really useful. So that was part of what helped me in school, was just taking notes or doodling while the teacher was talking. Same thing, you can still do that as an adult. You can still read books and take notes and do doodles. And it also means that you can make jokes. So like, if I'm like, oh, I don't like this apple, goodbye. I don't have to like it, but I can put like, oh, it wasn't good. I can just write that. Isn't that cool? You don't have to like worry about keeping everything clean, especially with digital media where you have layers. You can just have a layer that's just like being mean to yourself indirectly, right? You can be like, I want this to be better. This part not good. And I don't mean like, oh, I suck at drawing. I'm so bad. Like, you don't want to take notes that just discourage you from drawing, but you do want to still acknowledge the parts where you are weaker, right? If you need to do push-ups, you're not going to be like, oh, my arms are really weak. You're going to be like, yeah, I need to do more push-ups. Because if you just say, oh, my arms are weak, I can't do push-ups, then you're never going to do them. So deleting your art also means, not literally, because it means that you have a point to look back on. So these are some of the first drawings that I uploaded to DeviantArt back in like 2010, 2011. That first one is Sky. He used to be a koala. He's not a koala anymore. But you can see how different my art is, because I imagine, hopefully everybody was paying attention to the first panel's background. I had the cool like big pool toy splash illustration painting thing. This doesn't look as good. It's crazy. It's almost like that was 15 years ago. But you can also see, wow, that's the iTunes logo for anybody who is a Zoomer or younger. That's what the icon for iTunes used to look like. I don't even know if a lot of you know what iTunes is, because Apple Music is a thing now. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do a speed paint. Do you know how long that took me? 2 hours. It was crazy. But that's the thing about getting faster and getting better, is that you're never going to feel like you're faster or better unless you have a way to see how far you've come. And if you delete everything, if you burn all of the paper, that there are ways of treating that with catharsis. Like, I am drawing this thing in order to destroy it. But if you're just like clearing out your backlog of everything that you've done without like being able to keep a couple things so that you can see how far you have actually come and how much you've improved, you're doing yourself a disservice. So feel free to scribble out the drawing, but don't like tear the paper out and throw it away. Like, you can still look back on a drawing that has a scribble over it and be like, yeah, that sucked and I got better. Or maybe you'll look back on it and be like, that was actually good and I was just really mean to myself that day. But you can't do that if you don't have something to reflect on. So now we're going to move on to the next topic, which is, what is ideation? What are ideas? And this is kind of where we're now thinking about, like, less the pitfalls, less like what do we need to think about as we're drawing, and more what are we drawing in the first place, right? But ideas are, the thing about setting up this panel is I don't have my notes, so I have to kind of remember what my notes were for this slide. But ideas are very, very straightforward, right? They can be as simple as red and blue make purple, or they make magenta. That's the cool thing about ideas, is they can have different paths. You can start with the same idea that somebody else has and turn that into something adjacent or different or kind of your own spin on it, right? Ideas do not have to be original. They just have to be yours. They can be as simple as, when I was in school, I had somebody who was just like, oh, I want Borderlands plus Call of Duty. Which is, they were like, yeah, because I used to give tours of my university, and I was touring this student who was interested in going to the same university as me. And they were like, yeah, I want this to be my student project. I just want to make Call of Duty and Borderlands, but as a student, by myself. Cool, you have a goal in mind. Good luck with that, right? So ideas can be as big as you want them to be, but this idea, relatively speaking, is just two, like, I guess not two words per se, but it's two proper names. But it can be red plus blue. It can be Borderlands plus Call of Duty. It can be, oh, what if my character was wearing, the funny sweater that's been going around on Blue Sky? It doesn't have to be original, but it can also be as deep as like building an entire world. Let's say that you do tabletop RPGs and you guys want to design a character, and then you have to think about, how would you draw this accessory that your character always has with them? Those are good ideas as well. So like, when you're actually coming up with ideas, this also slows down a lot of people, is that they worry too much about what idea they should start with. Because, as you guys have possibly seen, there is the draw a circle, you can make it better later. That does catch up a lot of people. They worry that their first idea is not good enough, or that they need to wait until they have a higher skill level until they can express it. The cool thing about ideas, and I actually heard this recently on a YouTube video, unfortunately I don't remember who, so I can't reference their name, but they were like, ideas don't expire. You can draw the same idea twice as well. And that is going to kind of feed back into, what is iteration? It's making mediocre things over and over. You can draw the same idea multiple times. That's what drawing your persona is. It's just drawing the same idea multiple times. And that's why everybody's like, oh, I feel like I draw my persona differently every time I draw them. Yeah, because guess what? Sometimes you haven't eaten as much that day. There's so many different reasons why our art will change from day to day. Some of that is the stimuli that we've taken in, what we've learned recently, what our mood is, how our energy levels are. So you can see, like, I drew like a whole bunch of versions of my character. I showed you guys, my character used to be a koala, and then I changed him into a red panda dragon hybrid. And then I was like, oh, I like transformation. That's a cool topic. What if I just do the thing where I see what my character would look like as a bunch of different species using the same palette? None of these drawings are super polished or good. It was just me getting the idea down because I thought it would be fun. And that is another takeaway, I guess. Kind of similar to when we drew the apple, is make sure that you guys have fun. Like, learning is an activity that, as a kid, we want to have fun while we're learning. We want to, play hopscotch while learning our numbers or whatever. You don't just want to stare at a piece of paper and cry about the black and white lines that are next to each other the whole time. You want to you want to live a little bit. So this one is harder. What should you draw? Because it is harder to do like a bunch of small things over and over again, to think, oh, I don't have an idea in mind right now, or I don't know if I want to start with this idea, because that's understandable. That's a valid response to coming up with an idea and being like, I can't do this in 5 minutes. Maybe I'll save it for later. This is generally what I go to when I am struggling with ideas for what to draw. I draw memes, I draw gift art, I make little silly joke things, and then I just doodle. So like, for example, when I was in, I think high school, I drew Goatee Man. And it was literally just this guy that had a goatee, and he had a little cape on him. And oh, I actually need to go back so you guys can see this. Hello? Why are you not going backward? Spoilers. There we go. I would draw Goatee Man. And this would be just the guy that I would draw every day when I am going into my math class, because it got my pencil moving. I was going into math class. I wasn't there to draw, but it still meant that like I got to have fun while taking the notes, because I got to draw my little Goatee Man. And then the thing about drawing the same character over and over again is that you start wanting to draw them different ways. Like you don't consciously think, oh, I want to change it up, right? But it gets boring drawing the same thing every time. When people are like, oh, can you do straight line practice, right? Can you draw from point A to point B 30 times in a row without making it too thick or like they're going over each other? That's not exciting. It is useful. It is very useful as like a training tool, but it's not fun. This guy's fun. And the thing is, I don't want to draw this guy the same way every time, for the same reason I don't want to draw a straight line every time, the same reason I don't want pizza literally every day, even if I do like pizza. So I would occasionally just like draw him with a fishing pole or like with boxing gloves or whatever, because the more often you do something, especially if you're just doing mediocre little doodles over and over, the more likely you are to also try and explore those different subjects. And that's a really good way to encourage yourself to find reference. Because that gets into the slides that you guys saw in advance. These are some of the examples of like cursed and weird things that I have drawn. We have a tall glass of water. I don't know if you guys caught that one. I drew that after I watched Tangled, because that was a line in that movie. We've got a magical girl, but if she was old, that's at the bottom there. We've got the spy disguised as Docky, so it's almost like there's nobody there anyway, right? He's invisible. Team Fortress 2 enjoyers. And we've also got gift art. So I've got a little birthday drawing that I did for Zaz Croc, who's here. I've also got, I think it's Fur is the name of the YouTuber I ran into at a convention and wanted to draw them a little gift art. And then on the bottom right, that's also Sky. I've shown my persona a lot because I like my persona. That was me being like, what if he was shaved? What if I just removed all of his fur? What would he look like? Also because I wanted to prove to people that he was a dragon. But that's what I mean, is like, none of these ideas are very well polished. Maybe the spy is the most polished because I was like, haha, I could actually sell that if I wanted to, right? That'd be funny.
He's here as spy right now.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, is like, that started out as like a silly idea. What if a spy was disguised as a blank pillow on a blank pillow? And I drew it. That's great. Because why does doing these things make you faster, and why is it a good place to start? It forces you to use reference. If I want to draw Mike Wazowski saying, "You are the apple of my eye," I need to know how to draw Mike Wazowski. That forces me to look up reference, and it forces me to like receive that information so that I can use it later. You know who else I had to look up to decide who was the apple of Mike Wazowski's eye? I had to look up the Applejack's Apple mascot. It doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be recognizable, right? That's
Change the mascot for Applejack.
They did. Yes. Because the apple used to be like in competition with cinnamon, and then they were friends because everything is friends in the end. But it also, like I said, it doesn't need to be good. This drawing is not super polished. It gets the idea across. I probably don't want to spend more time on this if I'm being honest. But it also does force the big think. It makes you like think, okay, if I want to portray Mike Wazowski and the Applejack's apple kissing, how do I do that? I have to think about those things in the context of each other because it's very easy to draw one character in the vacuum of space floating. But it's a lot harder to draw two characters interacting with each other, right? But I have to draw that if I want to get my idea across. And it doesn't have to be good, but I do have to start somewhere. It's also low priority stuff, right? Like I drew this just to make people laugh. I didn't draw this because it was an illustration that I was going to sell or something that I was going to post on social media everywhere. I drew this because I was in Discord and I thought it was funny. That's like a really important thing to focus on, is that not all of your art needs to be good. And when I say it doesn't need to be good, I don't mean that you should call it bad. I mean to say that it doesn't need to be like this perfect expertise level all the time. When people say the tip of the iceberg is the stuff that actually gets posted, it doesn't mean that the stuff that they don't post is bad. It just means that there's a lot they don't post. So remember, you don't have to only post the good stuff, and you don't have to post all of the good stuff. So now we get into kind of how we digest all of these things down, which is just art is communication. What we've done so far, I was able to communicate to you guys an apple. Look at that. We drew an apple. You guys can tell that that's an apple, I hope. It is round. It has a stem. Oh my gosh. Classic. We will get to the thing where I can actually show what I'm drawing. Yes, this is a beautiful apple. But the thing with art is that it is just communication. It is a way for people to express their ideas to other people. Other people could be their future selves. It doesn't have to be somebody else either. The thing is, because art is communication, you can write a 500,000 word novel, or you can write 2-sentence horror. Those are both communication. One is a lot simpler, one is a lot shorter, one is a lot more complex and more robust. You can speak in different languages. So here we have the Mona Lisa. Do you know what the Mona Lisa is? It's a character with a neutral expression facing 3/4 left. For people who get that reference, I appreciate you. Because that is what most people's default pose is. But the Mona Lisa, do you know how long it took? It was like a year, maybe 3, because he was able to just go back to it and refine it later. But that wasn't like the original idea. The original idea was just a lady facing 3/4 left, right? It's a pretty lady. It's well done. But it's a very simple idea that the artist was actually trying to express. You can simplify that down even further. That is also a character facing 3/4 left. But it sure is a lot simpler, isn't it? It's the same, but it is different. And now we're going to get really, really serial for real. We're going to draw another apple. But you know what we're going to do to draw that apple? There's my pencil. Why am I using the pencil? I literally checked with the back of the room if I should use pencil. The twist is that we are now going to look into our curved lines and our straight lines. CSI. I don't actually have a favorite CSI season, but I do like The Who. So these are essentially the building blocks for every single art piece. So just like every language, like an A is a combination of straight lines, a lowercase a is a combination of curved lines. You can put things together to simplify ideas very, very swiftly by understanding that everything is just structured from these when you are illustrating. Sometimes you've got pen pressure or other things. Sometimes you have a brush, a thicker brush or a thinner brush, but at the end of the day, you are either going in a straight line or you are not. So we do have the apple on the screen. I'm going to ask you guys to follow along. This is where you guys get to draw again. And this is cool because I want you guys to follow along. You know what that means? It means that you can't look at your page the whole time. You have to look at the screen sometimes too. We're making it more challenging. So we are going to draw a C. We are then going to draw a C facing the opposite direction. And then we are going to draw 2 small lines at the bottom. And then we are going to draw 1 straight line at the top. And then we are going to draw a little S curve. Oh, clearly I need to use a thicker marker. Where did it go? Where did my marker go? It's not over there, is it? All right. Well, should be fine. I will just go over my lines a bunch so you guys can see them. There we go. So hopefully you guys have something similar to this, right? Now we're going to draw an O in the top left. Oh, look at that. We added gloss. It's shiny now. But that's what I mean. We drew an apple for like 2 minutes earlier, right? In fact, we drew apples for two minutes and whatever I did the first time. Did that not go a lot faster? And it still looks like an apple, right? Like you guys can interpret from kind of the negative space, positive space, blah, 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 technical terms. You can look at that and be like, that kind of looks like an apple. And that's what I mean about simplifying down your forms and understanding that speed is about like basic knowledge of the object that you're drawing. Because if you already know what something looks like, but you're just trying to interpret it on the page, you want to simplify it down as much as possible. So we've got our shapes, we have our circle, we've got our line, but as we've gone through this presentation, everything has gotten simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. And as a result, we have also been able to go just as fast. You guys were able to follow me pretty easily with that, right? Because it was just a couple simple lines. If we wanted to add more details to this, we could just draw a couple more bumps at the bottom, maybe a couple more bumps at the top, close out our shape. There you go. Beautiful apple. My name is Apfel Sky. Do you know what Apfel means in German? Apple. It's crazy. But that is the power of lines. So this also gets into a couple pieces of advice that people also generally give out to novice artists, which is like chicken scratch versus hatching. This gets into like people doing things that they don't realize are actually useful art tools because they're applying it with the wrong technique, right? If you think about chicken scratch, that's basically what I did here. I went over my line a bunch of times. That's fine, right? It still is recognizably an apple, but obviously the fewer lines that I use, the faster I get to go. But hatching is just lines over and over again as well. It's just that there's an order to them. Chicken scratch feels less confident because you're not really aware of where you're going with them. You're constantly changing your mind about where things should be. If we're running into that issue of like, oh, I drew this beautiful man, right? And he has gorgeous hair and these big, beautiful eyes and a smile with teeth. So many teeth. Oh my gosh, the microphone shadow right there. Actually, oh, that's crazy. I forgot about the thing that I literally brought for this. Oh, come on. There we go. White light. A little bit more even lighting on there. But like with chicken scratch, a lot of times people will just go over their lines a whole bunch and they'll be like, this looks really good, right? And then they'll go to actually ink it and they'll be like, man, my line art is really, really bad compared to the sketch. It's not that it's bad, and a lot of you guys have probably heard this before. The problem is that chicken scratch or overlining everything multiple times in the sketch, it forces your brain to kind of like fill in the blanks the same way that we do in nature, where we're just like, that's the edge of a leaf, but that's not actually the edge of a leaf. That's just the separation between the light hitting the leaf and the light not hitting the leaf. There's no actual line there, right? And that's pretty common advice. But similar to how we view sketches, if you put so many lines that you can't actually tell what's going on here anymore, that is going to slow you down, because now when you do go back to ink it, you're going to be like, well, which line is the good one? I don't know. So one of my secrets is use less lines. Because sketches, especially if you're doing an undersketch for like a full pretty illustration, you can start with like really, really loose scribbles. But if you don't hyperfixate on making the scribbles look good, then that means that you can then, especially in digital illustration, you can do a new layer. And now you can focus on the stuff that you want, refine it a little bit more, and then go to another layer, refine it a little bit more, and actually break that down into multiple steps. But with each of those kind of delineations, you can use fewer and fewer lines, because at the end of the day, you just want to understand where to put your ink. You don't need to have that perfect inking line in your sketch, because that's not the point of the sketch. So that is one of those technique things, like I said, is that if you're going over your lines multiple times, that's not a bad thing to do, but it's something where you can apply it in different places, such as hatching, where you're trying to add shading in for maybe a stylistic touch. It's also circles versus scribbles, right? If I draw a circle like this, it doesn't look like a circle, right? It looks circular, but it doesn't look like a circle. Whereas if I do this, that looks like a circle, even though it's not closed, even though it's not perfect, because it is much simpler. Our brain is consuming less information. So instead of us looking at this and being like, this is a lot of lines, this is kind of like a furry ball, it's just like, no, this is a circle, because we've broken it down as simple as possible. It's also knowing where to go. So kind of like I said with delineating your sketches, if you're drawing a line, right? This is actually crazy. I got super lucky with my first How to Draw Anime book when I went to the library. It happened to be really, really good. I wish that I had a picture of it here, but it's How to Draw Anime and Game Characters. It's a Japanese author, but it was translated, I think it's from like 2002 or something. But one of the first things that they show you in that book is how to draw straight lines, which crazy. I want you guys to follow along if you can. Go ahead and draw 2 dots on your paper. Draw 2 dots on your paper, and then draw a line connecting them. Again, like when we did the first apple, probably not the straightest line. Maybe you guys overshot it a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit wonky. So now, draw 2 lines again, or 2 dots again, rather. And put your pen down on that first dot or pencil, and then look at the second dot and draw to the second dot while looking at the second dot.
Wow. Okay.
Isn't that cool?
Wow.
You stopped at the second dot. That's crazy. That was one of the first things that I got to take away from this How to Draw Anime book. If nothing else, it was just, wow, I can actually stop my pen somewhere. But chances are your line is probably a little bit straighter as well. And you can extrapolate this. You don't have to look at the end mark, but if you're looking ahead of where you're drawing, a lot of times that leads to a straighter line, because you're not looking at where your pen is, you're looking at where your pen is going. It's just like if you're driving, you're not going to look straight down at the road, because then you won't see the stop sign. You want to make sure that you're looking where you're going. And this applies obviously conceptually as well to the concept of art, which is like, what is the goal of the piece that you're working on? If you want to draw this super complicated character that has wings and everything, break it down. You know that you want a wing. You know that you need to draw a wing. So you look up reference, and then you look up how to draw a feather. And you know what a feather is? It's a line with a curve. Breaking it down just like we did earlier. So that is a good way of kind of keeping your lines, very clean and very simple, is to just think about where you are going before you do it. So this is additional stuff that you can do. Obviously, this is outside of the scope of what we are actually doing here. But I've just talked about like drawing straight lines and like curves versus straights and all of that stuff. Draw a Box, really good free resource for this. If you guys have not already heard of it, I definitely encourage you to check it out. You don't actually have to like follow all of their lesson plans or whatever, but it does have a lot of just like basically homework, if you want to call it that. But it gives you diagrams that you can actually follow if you do want to learn more of the technical stuff. But a lot of the other things that you can do to just learn these techniques, for example, tracing. I'm not going to elaborate on the whole is tracing theft thing because that has been done to death. But you know what I did when I was a kid? I had a book with Pokemon in it, and I traced the Pokemon out of that book. And you know what skill that taught me? How to draw lines. It did not teach me how to draw Pokemon because the thing is, that's using different parts of your brain. But if you're trying to learn the technique of line art, you can trace somebody else's lines because then you're not focused on what the subject matter is of their drawing. You're just focused on how they're applying those lines. If you want to draw the subject matter, you can take it a next step and you can try to recreate an image. That's more of what a masterwork study is, where you are looking at an existing piece and trying to replicate it as best you can. But kind of like we were talking about earlier, hyperfixation, simplification. The thing with masterwork studies is that very rarely are you ever going to spend the same time that they did on it. It's going to look bad, and that's okay. It's a masterwork study. You literally are trying to learn how to be better, not to be them. And that is like another really, really useful tool for improving your speed, is just understanding how other people approach stuff. And that's why these how to draw books that I ran into when I was a kid were so useful, because they literally told me how they draw a straight line. And I took that years into the future. I'm 31 now. I learned that when I was like 9. It was super useful. We've also got drawing exercises. So like I said, the stuff from Draw a Box is really useful. Gesture drawing, we're actually going to do that in a little bit. Contour drawing, if you guys have not heard of contour drawing, that is just trying to draw a subject without picking your pen up, which means that you are going to scribble. So then the challenge is, can you avoid scribbling so much that you can no longer see what that thing is? So there's a lot of different professional, if you will, methods to improve your technique. And Draw a Box is the one that I suggest quite a bit. We're actually going to do some gesture drawing. So I want to elaborate because we did have a figure drawing panel earlier, and I didn't get to attend it, so I'm not sure exactly what they did there. But figure drawing is not the same thing as gesture drawing. It's squares versus rectangles. Figure drawing is drawing the figure. It's human, like you've got somebody posed and you are drawing the figure. Gesture drawing is part of that, but it's about getting the vibe. It's about like getting the idea of what they are doing down on paper quickly. You are not drawing exactly where their muscles are. You're not drawing exactly where their bones are. That would be really strange anyway. You are just trying to get something down on the paper that is representative of what you are looking at. And gesture is essential to going fast. Again, I accidentally frickin' hit the thing with my palm. There we go. Gesture is essential to drawing fast because that's how you do thumbnailing. So when you're actually breaking your idea down into, do I want to do it one of 4 ways and figuring out which way you're happy with. It's also really important for posing because when you are like trying to figure out where 2 characters are, you can't just draw the 2 characters there unless you can make a perfect mental image, and very few people can do that, right? So having the ability to do gesture means that you can get those characters in their rough positions, make sure that it works before proceeding with all of the detail and the hyperfixation. It also does not require expertise, right? You benefit from knowing anatomy, you benefit from knowing proportions, but gesture drawing just uses the stuff that I've already covered with you guys today. It's just drawing straight lines and drawing curves and putting them roughly where it looks like a character would be. So, shout out to TrueRef. I actually reached out to them on Blue Sky to get permission to use all of their photos. Not that I actively needed permission because a lot of their stuff is already free to use, but they were nice enough to give me formal consent for it. I definitely encourage you guys to check it out if you do want to do more gesture drawing in your free time. I put a QR code up there if you guys want to take a picture. But they're great. They pay everybody who actually works for them. So the way that this gesture drawing session is going to work, and this is something that I actually did in college that improved my speed a lot, is we are going to start with very long times, and we are going to end with very short times. A lot of gesture drawing is the opposite. If you were to go to a life drawing class, chances are they're going to start with warm-ups, and those are going to be very fast, and then you are going to go longer and longer as the time goes on. But the teacher that I had in college actually had us do this several different days because, and you guys will see why, it forces you to learn how to simplify, which is kind of what we've been talking about this whole time. Also, actually, before we move on, let me go back to here so you can see this only takes about 10 minutes. So chances are you guys like me have been told, oh, I don't have any time to draw, or have also said yourself, I don't have any time to draw. Chances are you do have time. It's just hard to encourage yourself to do it because it feels inconvenient, right? But I want to elaborate that the cool thing with gestures is that they are very quick. So as long as you are comfortable doing them and feel like you have the time, if you will, it's really, really quick. It's a great warm-up to do in advance of doing something that is actually going to take more time or that you want to put more detail into. So we are going to start with our first one. Do not start quite yet. I'm going to set a timer for all of us. 5 minutes. Scooch my paper to be in view. Also, unfortunately, payment providers exist, so I'm going to censor that for everybody. But we are going to get started with our first drawing. So again, I encourage everybody to participate if you've got paper in front of you. If you guys got here a little bit late, if you want to find, I left some resources out for everybody, so there should be paper available. If you guys have one of the free handout things that I brought, feel free to tear out a page for folks. I would like everybody to participate if they are able. Do your best. Again, this isn't about being perfect. A lot of different skill levels exist in this room. We are going to look at this picture and we are going to try to draw this lovely figure. 3, 2, 1, go. 5 minutes. And I am going to do my best here to draw it the way that I would have when I was just starting university so that we have a basis for comparison later. But you guys, again, do not need to worry about how you are doing this yet. We will get there. So if you're like, oh, I'm really slow compared to Sky, I'm literally the one running the panel about going faster. It's okay. You don't need to keep up with me. All right, and that was the first minute done. All right, that's 2 minutes. I need to like make sure that my phone screen doesn't turn off. Oh, I guess you guys can't see the timer anyway. Oop, toss that there for you. 2 minutes. All right, 1 minute left. Four, three, two, one. All right, we did it. We did our first gesture drawing. Okay, how many people was that their first time doing a gesture drawing? All right, actually a few. Cool. Welcome. For everybody else, I'm sorry that I put you through that again. I really like gesture drawings. 5 minutes is a lot of time. We are now going to do 2 minutes. Similarly, this one is censored, just in case. I'll turn to a new page here, make sure you guys can see. Let me make sure that my phone screen does not turn off so that you guys can actually keep an eye on the timer if you so choose. Settings, where? There it is. Display. Screen timeout. 10 minutes. We do not need more than 10 minutes. Cool. All right, 2 minutes, and we are going to start in 3, 2, 1, go. So again, the idea is just that you want to try and draw the character or the person as they are shown in the image to the best of your ability. All right, that was 1 minute. 60 seconds remain. Well, 50 now. All right, 30 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's 2. We did 2 of them. Isn't that cool? So we are going to talk about now, reflecting on the ones that we just did. And I will do that by showing you guys what I did. So we'll go back here because, wow, there's actually a camera cutout on this one. Here is my first one. There it is. Wow, it looks so good, right? No. It looks okay. And that's the important part. Again, the point of gestures is not to draw the most beautiful person in all of creation. Her face looks crazy. It's just scribbles. Like, the hair is just scribbles, right? And this is something that I would like to elaborate for you guys. This was me trying to kind of represent the way that I felt like I was when I was in college. You know what's cool about being an art teacher is you are not a beginner. So it's very hard to be a beginner. So keep that in mind whenever you guys do look up resources online. Nobody who is looking up art advice from art experts, neither of them are beginners. So you will always have some amount of baseline knowledge. The fact that you guys are at this convention and you're seeing all of these characters, chances are you have drawn before, means that you are not a beginner. And that goes for everything. If you have eaten food, you are not a food beginner. Because you know what food tastes like. You can differentiate what is good and bad, right? So I want to make sure that you guys understand the stuff that I'm explaining here today, I'm doing in hopes that it helps you guys improve. But I can't ever put myself exactly in the position of somebody else and what they're thinking and how they are approaching their drawing. I can only offer advice. So if anybody ever gives you a hard and fast rule in their YouTube video, I really enjoyed some of Ethan Becker's videos, if you guys know who that is. But he did the funny tutorial videos where he had a giant cleaver with a cigarette attached to it with the microphone. I think the microphone was on the cleaver. I think the cigarette was also on the cleaver. But he was like, oh, just draw this triangle without elaborating. Because again, being an expert does not make you a good teacher. So keep that in mind, that somebody who is trying to offer advice to beginners is not a beginner and is doing their best. But you need to make sure that you take everything that people say with a grain of salt. So I'm going to go through what my process was, but if it doesn't work for you, just keep in mind that that's okay. But in trying to emulate what I previously did historically when I was in university, we've got this lovely character. I focused a lot on the outline. You can see how scribbly the outline is. You can still see where the arm goes, kind of. Like, if we go back to the actual reference for this one, my arm is not even in the right spot because I was trying to draw the character, but I wasn't looking at the reference. And that's a big kind of weakness that a lot of people have when they first start doing gesture drawing, is that they spend more time looking at the paper than they do at what they're drawing. And when you're drawing a lot of lines, like when you're putting a lot of lines down on the paper, that's more likely to happen. That's why I want to encourage you guys to simplify, to think about what you're actually putting down on the paper and to reduce how much you're putting down on the paper. Because the fewer lines that you are putting down, chances are the more you're actually looking at the subject in the same amount of time. Observation is crucial. We looked at the apple. The apple was really simple. This is really complicated. It's not just a circle. It's a lot of overlapping body parts. There's different physique from possibly yourself. There's a lot to think about. Again, this face is just a bunch of scribbles. It's not particularly representative of the emotion that was being expressed. But the important thing, was that important? Do we care about the expression of the character? That's probably not something that you guys were thinking about when you first started. Was the expression the important part? Was the pose the important part? Chances are you just drew the character because that's what I told you to do. So again, thinking about what you're going into this hoping to take out of it, what your goal is moving forward, where you want to be. I also had way too much time, right? Like 5 minutes is a long time for something like this. So I started just adding shading and all of this other crap that I didn't need, that didn't add to the piece, but I did it because I felt like I had to fill that void, right? I had to do something with the entire 5 minutes available to me, when I could have gotten all of the information I needed probably in 3.5. Whereas if we go to the 2-minute one, wow, that's a lot less information, isn't it? Because I wasn't focusing on what I actually needed, right? Her legs aren't even fully on the paper. Chances are a lot of you guys ran into that as well, right? Where you probably started with the head and then the body just kind of ended up off of the page and you're just kind of squeezing everything in. Again, planning is essential to getting better at this stuff. And so we're going to move forward with our shorter and shorter times, trying to keep that in mind. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips of what works for me to help me simplify my lines and hopefully keep everything inside of the boundaries of my page. It's kind of sad not having digital tools, isn't it? And not being able to just like shrink everything and move it over. That's the point. We're trying to get better. The tools are great. The tools are there. You can use them to help you make a final image that is prettier, but it's also useful to learn those skills so that you're not fully reliant on the tools to come in clutch at the end. Nobody likes movies that are fixed in post. I mean, there probably are some good movies out there that are fixed in post, but generally speaking, it's bad if you have to redo the entire movie, right? That was what happened with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They had to reanimate the entire character because people didn't like it. So knowing in advance what you're hoping to get out of it, planning in advance, getting that feedback early means that you're not spending as much time fixing it. So I will encourage everybody to do this alongside me. Find just an empty spot on your page and draw kind of like a vertical rectangle. It doesn't need to be the same proportions as mine, but we're going to pretend that this is our page. And we're just doing this in a small section of our paper so that we don't have to use an entire page for this example. One of the ways that my professor kind of taught me to think about where to position things is to put a line toward the top of the page where you expect the top of the body to be. So generally speaking, unless the arm is above the head, that will be the top of the head. And then we are going to do something crazy. We're going to draw another line at the bottom of the page. And that's where the bottom of the character is going to be. Usually that's where the feet come in contact with the ground. Look at that. We already planned for where the character is going. Now you know that the head cannot be this big. So it helps a lot to understand what your goal is so that you can make these choices in advance. So because we know that this is the top of the character and the bottom of the character, we can also draw a little line in the middle that can be roughly where the hip is, right? Because chances are your hip is, relatively speaking, halfway in the proportions of your body. Like if you've got your head, your pelvis, your feet, pelvis is probably in the middle somewhere. And maybe it moves up and down depending on the proportions of your character. Tracer Overwatch has a very high waist, right? So that's going to be slightly different, but we're not drawing Tracer Overwatch, we're drawing real people. But that gets into our anatomy. So you guys don't have to follow along with this, but I'm just showing you, like if I were to draw a little silhouette of a character, now we know that that entire character fits on our page. And that is already better than this one where the arm is literally running into the side of the page, right? Now I know what to avoid and I don't feel like I've messed up and can't fix it later. Or that I have to go back and fix it. Like I could grab a sticky note, I guess, and like draw on the sticky note and do, like that would be weird. I don't want to do that if I can avoid it. So the other thing that is really, really helpful is to keep in mind what parts of the body we are going to get the most information out of. For human characters, that is usually going to be, and again, I'm drawing a little square. You guys can follow along if it's helpful. Again, taking notes, doodling is helpful for retaining information because you're physically interacting with the knowledge that I am giving you. Chances are the things that are most important to the human body are going to be the head, the torso, the pelvis, hand 1, hand 2. You'll notice I did not say left and right because there are characters that don't have only left and right hands. Crazy. Foot 1, foot 2. Those are usually going to be the landmarks because they are the largest parts of the body and they are the parts of the body that tend to interact with the world around us. If you're thinking about, oh, well, sometimes I use like my knees, right? chances are if you're on your knees, your feet are also touching the ground. So these are the ones that I like to focus on. Maybe it helps for you guys to focus on different ones, but if you can figure out where you want to put these on the paper, and again, if we have that top line and we have that bottom line, we know where we want those to go. Again, we know that the pelvis is somewhere in the middle, so now we know roughly where we would like the pelvis to be. And then we can connect those. So you can see my proportions are a little bit funky. This guy's got really short legs. But again, we know what the important information was that we're trying to get out of our gesture. So if we've got a hand up in the air, we know, okay, we want the hand to be something that we focus on for some length of time. Because that's, if you're drawing and you don't draw the hand, and then the slide goes away because we finished the gesture drawing, you now have to remember where that hand was. And that's really, really hard. So you can imagine if you're doing real life drawing, like you're just sitting on a bench somewhere watching people walk by, chances are they're not going to stand still for 3 minutes. So this is where that skill is really useful and why those observational skills are really good of like consolidating, delineating, bringing that information down to something as simple as possible so that you can be like, okay, their hand was up here. That was the important part. Maybe their hand was in a fist and that was the important part. So as we're going now into our 1 minute gesture, I just want you guys to remember to keep those things in mind. So 1 minute, MasterCard, yippee. Don't start yet. I haven't started my timer. I'm spoiling you guys by letting you see the slide in advance of the timer. All right, we're getting started in 3, 2, 1, go. So again, we can draw a line for the top, a line for the bottom. We know that the top is that hand that is pointing up toward the sky. We know that vaguely in the middle is going to be where the pelvis is, so we can give ourselves a line to show that. And then we just figure out where the rest of the body is relative to those guidelines that we put down. And you guys have 20 seconds. Yep. Done. Yeah, I didn't even give you guys the countdown there. It was so quick. How many of you actually were able to draw the hands and the feet and the pelvis and the head? Exactly. Not all of you. That's so hard, isn't it? But that is what I mean by simplifying, getting faster, is that this requires iteration. You cannot just do it first try. So do not feel disappointed that you are not able to keep up with me. Again, I am the one running this panel for a reason. But you guys were able to put hopefully more information down on the page than you expected to. You guys probably have a character that fits on the page now just because of me introducing that idea of what the top and bottom of the page are, right? Hopefully. If you guys didn't, you don't have to raise your hands, it's okay. But now, again, we're going down to 30 seconds. So I want you guys to get ready. I'm not going to give you guys a preview of the slide. So let me get the timer ready. Everybody get their paper ready. And we are starting in 3, 2, 1. Did it skip? Oh, it went to the 15-second one. Okay, there you go. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I messed up, so you guys get a little preview. We are starting now. Done. Wasn't that exciting? So now I can show you guys what I did. Wow, look at that. It's a bunch of scribbles. But can you tell what those scribbles mean? Isn't that exciting? It's just like the apple that we did over here. It's just a bunch of straight lines and not straight lines that look like something. And if you guys were able to do this apple, chances are you are able to do a human figure. It's just that you guys are so caught up in the idea that we are drawing people and that people are complicated and that you have to get things in the perfect spot. These are gestures. It's about vibes. We're not figure drawing right now. We're not spending 10 minutes drawing like any of the classic thinker poses, or we're not making like a Bernini sculpture. We're just doing gestures. So don't worry about making everything perfect. And as we get into the 15-second one, yes, 15 seconds. Now I want to give you guys an idea of like the way that I try to simplify down everything even further. So for example, what is the important information that we need from the head? Chances are it's just the direction it's facing. So if I draw a little box here again, and you guys are free to follow along as well, I'm just going to do the same thing. Mark the top of the page, mark the bottom of the page, make sure that I know where I want to stay in. We are going to find our halfway point. Wow, look at that. We've already got a reference on screen, so we can use that as a guide. So the head, which direction is the head facing? Facing up. So one of the ways that I try to simplify the body is by just doing a little mask shape. And sometimes I don't even draw the full square. This is a useful tool for me. Again, for other people, maybe you want to draw a cube. That would be a lot of lines though, right? That would not be very easy to draw in 15 seconds and draw the rest of the body. So sometimes I will literally just be like, oh, she's looking up, and draw a line like that. It's just a little arc. So we'll draw a little arc. And then which direction is her torso facing? Well, we can use the shoulders and draw a line between the shoulders and make another arc for where the shoulders are. So maybe the shoulders are like that because they're facing down, but her shoulders are up. And then we've got the pelvis. The pelvis, booty's kind of sticking out like that, right? But you could also draw a line that goes between the anterior superior iliac spine. Very fancy technical term. People who like bones know that term. But for every single person on Earth, unless you have a really crazy abnormality, that is the hard points of your pelvis that you can feel underneath your stomach on either side of your body. That is where your muscles for your femur connect. That's where your obliques, your side muscles go. Yes. So that's also like a really good landmark to use. That was one that we used in college. So I can just draw a downward facing arc that goes between roughly where those 2 points are, because the pelvis is facing down and not up. And then where are the feet? You've got 1 foot there, right? Straight line. It's just a straight line, baby. And then where's the other? Oh, it's on the line that we already drew. Isn't that cool? So that's how many lines. Including the top, bottom, and center line, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's add the hands. So we've got one hand on the hip. Wow, we already have the hip there, so that's 8. If we really wanted to add that line. Where's the other hand though? It's not there, so we don't have to draw it. Isn't that cool? But like I said, form is really important. So knowing where we expect the hand to be is still important. So having some useful tool, some useful line to help us when we're looking at our drawing later and trying to figure out where that other hand was, maybe we draw the side of the arm. It doesn't have to be exactly these. The point of gesture is to get the idea down. If using different lines or different shapes helps you, the point is just simplifying it as much as possible. So now we can draw the line of action, or the gesture line, or whatever you guys want to call it. You know what's cool about the line of action? It doesn't have to be one line either. We can draw one line that goes through the spine and another line that goes to the other leg. And that can be our flow, because art rules are made up. It's useful to know that there is a flow line, a gestural line, especially if you are working in cartooning. I know that there was the panel about like character acting in illustration the other day, and a lot of that is about which direction the body is flowing. So that is a good concept to know. But again, it doesn't have to be a single line. That's just an arbitrary rule that people have realized is helpful sometimes. So we're going to go now into our 15-second drawing. I want you guys to remember everything that I've shown you, which is figure out what you actually care about and figure out how to simplify that as much as possible. Don't hyperfixate on one area of the body. If you want to get the head, the torso, arms, legs, pelvis, if you want all 5 of those things to exist on the page in 15 seconds, they need to share equal amounts of time, roughly so. So, with that being said, I'm going to get the timer ready. And you guys already got spoiled on the next slide, but I did not censor the next one so that you guys can actually see the full image clearly. 3, 2, 1, go. I realized as I said that. Yeah, we're good. Okay, restart timer. 3, 2, 1, go. Four seconds. 3, 2, 1, 0. Boom. That's it. 15 seconds. Isn't that crazy? All right. Hopefully you guys realize how crazy it is to try and ask for somebody to draw an entire human form in 15 seconds. I just told you guys all of the instructions on how to do it. It was still really, really hard. And I drew lines. Can you guys tell that that's a woman? You know, because we have pattern recognition in our brains. That's not a woman, that's just lines on the paper. But I was able to simplify it down because I have practiced this a lot and because I know what I want to put down on the paper. And so that's what I encourage you guys to do, is to just think about what the stuff that is important that you want to get down on the paper actually is, because it means that you can get through things a lot quicker. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do another final challenge. Can you put 30 seconds of information in 15 seconds? That's what we just tried to do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a 30-second gesture. I want you guys to see if you can do a 15-second gesture and then the rest of the 15 seconds, okay? That is kind of the way that my professor kind of taught us to do this in college, is he would lower the time, lower. If you guys can do your 15-second gesture in 15 seconds again, that means that you have another 15 seconds to do more, right? So that's an interesting way of looking at it, is the faster you can get that basic idea down, the more time you have to actually flesh it out and make it look nice. So again, we're doing a 30-second gesture, but try and see if you guys can put 15 seconds of information that we just did into 15 seconds, and then almost treat the 30 seconds as though it was the minute gesture that we did earlier. So let me get my clock open. 30 seconds. Grab a new page here. And we are starting in 3, 2, 1. Boom. Cool guy with swords. Again, direction of head. Hand placement. Torso position, torso direction, where the feet are placed relative to each other. All of these things that you are actively thinking about, I am sure, and definitely not overwhelmed by the amount of time. By the way, you guys have 5 seconds left. Wasn't that fun? Do you guys feel like you actually did get more information in that 30 seconds than you did the first time we did 30 seconds? Yeah, that's cool. It feels good, right? Like, it's not a good drawing. Chances are it's not a good drawing for anybody, but it feels good to get that much information down on the page that quickly. But notice how we never talked about props. So chances are you didn't even think about the swords because I didn't tell you to think about the swords. So that is why it is up to you guys to decide what is important, because the position and direction that the swords are facing, maybe that was what was important to you guys. Maybe you're drawing a sword fighter and he kind of needs the swords, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a second 30-second challenge, but this time it's going to be a fully dressed character. And I want you guys to figure out what is important to you as we're going into that. You guys know that we're going to draw a fully dressed character. Do you care about the clothes or do you just care about the pose? And you're free to make your own decision on what you guys want to focus on, but everybody get ready. We're going to start in 3, 2, 1, go. Three, 2, 1, 0. And chances are that felt different than the last one, right? Because now you guys were thinking about what information you needed, knowing that it was a clothed character, excuse me, and then you were able to advance off of that knowledge. Okay, we've got 5 seconds here, I think. So I need to actually wrap up pretty quick. We've gone a little bit longer than I expected. But the gesture drawing learning points. We talked about using reference a lot earlier in the presentation. And the important thing with reference that hopefully the gesture drawing taught you guys is that reference is not the be-all end-all. You don't have to perfectly match the reference. The important thing is that you gain knowledge from the reference. So if you're looking for an arm in a specific pose, that's really, really hard to find if you know exactly what pose you want to be in. What's a lot easier is figuring out like muscle diagrams or what could give you information so that you can extrapolate that information, turn it into something useful. We did gestures. We were not drawing those people. We were drawing gestures based on those people, but that was still useful reference for us, right? So that is an important thing to keep in mind, is that using reference does not mean that it has to look the same way that your final piece ends up. Tracking time. This can both be like figuring out how long something takes you, so like knowing in advance, oh, I'm expecting this to take an hour, but it could be, I want to only take an hour on this, like limiting your time as well. So those are both useful tools. Like actually saying this will only take me 30 seconds versus I want to take 30 seconds on this. And then also prep, doing warm-ups. We started really, really simple. We did the funny little apple thing, right? And then we moved to characters later. We did the more complicated stuff later. For me, a lot of my warm-ups are just drawing my persona because I draw my persona a lot. So it's a really easy warm-up because it's something that I already know how to do, but it gets my pencil moving on the paper. So starting with something simpler before you move into the advanced stuff is always helpful. Now we're going to talk about critique because I know that you guys are going to come out of this having a lot of thoughts about your own work and about what we learned today. Critique is incredibly important and it's part of the social aspect of being an artist. Critique is not the same as criticism. You are trying to be constructive, not destructive. Criticism is focusing on the flaws. That makes everybody feel bad, both the person being critical and the person receiving that criticism. When you are trying to help an artist grow, you can point out areas of weakness, but you do not want to call it bad because it is not bad. They put time and energy into it. It is still, even if it's amateur, amateur is not bad because it still exists. It's still progress toward a goal, right? Bad is contextual. And if you are critiquing something, if somebody is asking you how to improve, that is inherently not a bad thing. So you want to make sure that you are focusing on something that is positive that you want to take out of it. And this is true for self-critique as well. I mentioned taking the notes down next to your drawing. I could literally be like, oh, arm too low. Right? I can just do that. I don't have to keep my gesture drawings clean. Why would you keep your gesture drawings clean? They're gestures. You can be like, oh, icky, yuck. I didn't even draw where his neck was or like which direction his chest was facing. You know why I didn't? Because I only had 30 seconds. But that's fine. You can still acknowledge that those are areas that you are weak in so that you can focus on improving them. Taking notes, circling, like, oh, there was a sword here. Hmm? Oh, this guy. There we go. So yeah, you can just write notes and draw arrows and scribble over stuff and be like, this wasn't as good. Maybe I'll draw it like this later. You can take a gesture and clean it up later if you want to, because that's kind of the fun of it. So when you are critiquing other people, keep that in mind as well, is that you don't want to focus on just things that are bad, because that doesn't help them grow. You want to be like, okay, I think that you could approach the arm differently. You could maybe try to shorten the arm next time, right? And you don't have to phrase it like that. You can just be like, the arm is kind of long. It doesn't have to be a positive, meaningful statement, but it does need to avoid being critical. The other thing is ask questions. This is something that a lot of people don't realize that they can do when they're critiquing. You can be like, why did you do that? If somebody's like, I think this is bad, can you give me advice? You can be like, well, why did you draw the arm really long? And maybe they'll be like, because the character has long arms. Maybe you didn't know that that was what the point was, right? You don't want to be critical of somebody's work without understanding what they were trying to do in the first place. So it's a good idea to understand why you want to improve, because why you want to improve also drives like the resources that you're going to look for. If you want to draw better anatomy because maybe you're a bar artist or something, then chances are, if somebody's like, oh, those muscles look like they're in the wrong spot, what were you trying to do here? Or like, was that what you were hoping for? They can be like, well, no. And you could be like, okay, well, maybe look at chest muscle diagrams next time instead of just drawing, you know, Hawaiian loaf rolls. Like, obviously, you want to be careful phrasing jokes like that too, because you don't want to like hurt somebody's feelings in the process of trying to help them grow. That is the important part with critique. Some people say, I will use a respectful term, poop sandwich, right? Is introduce it with, I like this. That's the other thing that you can do, is you can critique somebody by focusing on the positives. You can be like, this you did really well. Maybe you're struggling with body anatomy, but the hair looks really good. You've actually made it look like it's flowing hair instead of like Yu Yu Hakusho hair or something. Like, and maybe they want Yu Yu Hakusho hair. That's the point, is like you want to make sure that you are focusing not just on areas that can be improved, but also being like, this is something that you're already showing a lot of expertise in. This is something that is good, because that also encourages people to continue working on stuff, right? But again, critique is not just toward other people, it's also toward yourself. You need to acknowledge the things that you are doing well. Because yes, we did do gestures, and yes, it was very difficult. It was hard to do things in 30 seconds, but chances are you guys still feel better getting more information down on the page in 30 seconds the second time than 30 seconds the first time. And that is cool. That is something that you can be proud of yourself for. There's areas to improve, but that is something that you did successfully. So again, we're going to do a quick recap of just what we did, where we started, right? We started with, I am so cool. When I'm saying that we need to be less self-critical and actually critique ourselves when we're working on stuff, this is what I mean. I made you guys write, I am so cool, even if you were not feeling cool. And then we used that like as a building block, as a first step toward drawing a character, drawing apples. I had like, what, 7 different gestures on top of showing you guys and having you guys follow along with all of my little advice pieces. You guys did already draw fast today. Like, that's something that you can take away from this, is like, it doesn't need to be super polished work in order for you to take something out of what you have done during this panel. And hopefully you guys can take that with you and use it to develop faster techniques. All right, and I want to do a Q&A, but let me just double check, because I know that we are technically at the end of our time. Yeah, I am the last panel in the room. So if you guys do have any questions, I do also have my iPad, so I can bring up digital tools. But if you guys do have any more technique questions or anything like that, feel free to stick a hand up and ask. But I know that since we are also at the end of the panel time, I'll go to the next slide real quick. There is my QR code again if you guys want to take a picture of it, if any of you guys have to take off. thank you guys again so much for attending my panel. Again, this was my first panel, so. I don't know about the slides. I don't know how to put those up online. Maybe I'll check in with Cork because I know that he did a quick notes version of his panel. But assuming that the recording went well and that I can stitch the pieces together from the computer shutting off in the middle, I am hoping that I can toss it up on YouTube. And I will post when I do that on Blue Sky and Telegram, though you can look up my name on Telegram and find I have a channel there. But I will definitely post it on Blue Sky. I will try and post it on Twitter and my galleries if I can remember as well. We have a question.
So when you said when you're doing like the gesture drawings, having like a kind of goal going into the session, when you mentioned that, do you give like an example of like what a goal would start like?
Yeah. So the question is, when you're going into something like a gesture, for example, and you're looking to have a goal in mind, how do you come up with a goal, or what are the goals that you are trying to achieve? That absolutely depends on what it is that you want to improve at. So for example, I like playing first-person shooter video game. You know what's a really cool thing that you can do to get better at first-person shooter video game is doing aim trainers, which are kind of boring. But I know that I want to get better at first-person shooter video game, and I know that aim trainers help with that skill, right? So if, for example, you want to do more like action poses, chances are your goal is that you want to make sure that the gesture looks dynamic, right? That you want to feel like there is flow, that there is motion. So maybe you go into the gestures trying to make sure that you've actually got like maybe directionality or maybe some motion. Maybe you don't want the figure to look like they have a perfect center of gravity, right? So it depends on what you're doing. Like if you're just doing gestures as warm-up, you don't have to have a goal other than I'm trying to warm up, right? That can be a goal too. But yeah, it helps to like have an idea of, oh, I'm going to draw a character's face. So maybe I do a gesture that's just the face and figure out what pieces of the face I think are important or how to get a pose down for the expression really quickly. So that's like how I look at it, is usually the goal just depends on what you want to do outside of gestures themselves. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
In terms of gesture drawing for clothing, like we did earlier for 15 seconds, what would you recommend focusing on if you're trying to do them quickly?
Yeah, so doing gesture for clothing specifically and what areas to focus on for that. Let me see if I can go back to that slide real quick.
I found that I got kind of stuck up on that slide specifically because I just really got overwhelmed with the timer as well as the...
Yes. So and that was kind of the point is in a way I wanted to show how overwhelming it is when you do get given more information, because it forces you to kind of look past what the character is wearing and figure out what the pose actually is under the clothing. And that kind of ties back into clothes because clothes don't really impact the way that we walk or the way that we, like, unless you're wearing really, really aggressively baggy or stiff clothing, chances are the human motion under it is going to be more important than the clothes itself. So when I'm focusing on clothing gesture, for example, this character, I just drew the straight line for the side of the coat because we're doing it really quickly, right? Like we just want to indicate to ourselves for later, if we wanted to clean this up, that there is a coat there. And the way that I can take away that this pose works is that the coat has gravity, so the coat goes straight down. And that was where that single line came from. But when you're doing something like folds, for example, folds are definitely something that you don't necessarily need to focus on with gesture. But the way that I've seen it most commonly simplified is triangles. Because chances are with any piece of fabric, you have a point of tension, which is where it's being held up, versus like where it's falling away from each other, where there's less tension. So if you wanted to draw a fold, sometimes you just do that, right? You just draw a little directional triangle, and then maybe this is the edge of the clothing, maybe it's not. So when you're looking at, like, let's say, yeah, like this arm So maybe I draw like vaguely the sleeve, right? And then I'm like, okay, this is the area of tension up in the corner, up by the wrist. And then I just draw some lines out of that. So I figure out where the fabric is actually, so this is actually the same thing I did with this line here, is I know that it's coming from the shoulder because that's where the point of tension is. And then the gravity is where it's relaxed, so it goes away from that point. So that's one of the ways that I would probably gesture clothing is just figure out where the tight spots of the clothing are.
Gotcha. And you can worry about shading and everything.
Yeah, because shading is definitely more of like a figure drawing thing than a gesture drawing thing. Yeah.
That's just like a different style together, like a different style.
Yeah, so figure drawing is more about like getting the muscles in the correct position, figuring out how the body is illuminated. It can be a lot of different topics. Gesture is very specifically the pose and motion, whereas, yeah, like a general figure drawing would include more proportional anatomy, form and lighting, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, any other questions? Hello.
I walked in the last 3 minutes. Can you do it all over again?
I'll do it all over again for you.
That's what the recording's for.
Yeah.
Is that on YouTube?
It will be.
I don't watch that.
Oh, okay. Can you make me switch spot?
Earlier you talked about like. Do you want us to return the?
No, those are for you to take. If you don't want a pen, you can leave it here.
I mean, someone broke my other one, so.
3 times. That's like all the reason I come here is for the 3 times.
But earlier you talked about like when you're doing like warm ups and stuff, or when you're doing just like
Yes.
like abandoning stuff, like more like don't be so tied to like having
Yes.
it be good. How do you balance that with the other advice of like trusting the process? So
Yes.
for that too.
So the question is, how do you balance the idea of trusting the process and understanding that there is an ugly phase relative to deleting your art and actually starting from scratch if you feel like you need to? I feel like a lot of that does just come with having stuff that you can call finished. Deleting your art doesn't mean deleting everything, right? And that was kind of what I showed in my slides, is I have a bunch of old stuff that you could probably have gone in and done more detailed. I just left it half finished, right? But half finished is still finished if I never come back to it. So if you want to think of it this way, like understanding when to stop versus like when you should restart something versus when to push through the ugly phase requires having gone through that ugly phase at least once before. So that does make it a little bit more challenging to give advice on specifically, because it also goes back into the iteration part where you just have to have drawn more than 2 things, right? Because if you've only, how do I put this? I can actually go back. Oh gosh, how quickly can I do this? Escape. And then slideshow from current slide. Cool. That way the recording hopefully sees it. But the drawing that I did here that's on screen, that is like the pool toy transformation in the pool, that is actually my 6th or 7th iteration of that drawing. Because the thing is, when I also say like restart or trust the ugly phase, if you don't think that you're going to get through the ugly phase, that's a good time to restart. Because I used roughly the same background, the same sketch for this, but I came back to it like 2 years later. And that was when I actually completed it. But completing it basically required me restarting because I had not worked on it for so long that the way that I approached it inherently changed as well. So again, it comes with experience, right? I tried to do it once, realized that I was frustrated, stopped, did other stuff, and then when I came back to this, I was able to accept what the ugly phase was and what I expected the ugly phase to look like. If you're thinking about this in terms of like finished work, actually having something clean that you are doing for a commission, at some point when you were doing stuff professionally, it's just about cutting your losses. It's understanding that you can't do everything perfectly. And that's why I did the business card stuff, because I can't do those business cards again unless I find the same people with the same references and spend more time on it. I'm never going to get to do those again anyway. So sometimes it's just about accepting and letting things go as well. Obviously that's not the case with every piece of art that you do, but again, like those will permanently stay in ugly phase because they weren't designed to be pretty in the first place. And sometimes that's okay, like accepting that your polished work is not always going to be your best work, because progress is not only non-linear, but again, going back to what I said at the beginning, your body composition changes every day. You're not going to draw the same every day. You're not a robot. So if you're okay with accepting that the stuff that you put out is not always going to be perfect and not always going to be your best, the next piece is not always the best piece. And being okay with that also makes it easier to get through an ugly process or to just be willing to call something done.
My question was, do you have advice, I guess, in terms of drawing fast or compositing like environments?
Yeah, so doing composition fast and doing like scenery and landscapes fast. I think that Feng Su Design, FZD School on YouTube is like a good resource for that. Let me get to a slide that has the cutout. There we go, cool, cutout. So FZD School. That channel is specifically about like, it's like concept art, but it's specifically like the design side of concept art. But they do a lot of landscape construction. And generally speaking with landscapes, it's just like characters. So kind of like how we were breaking things down into this is where the head should typically go, this is where the pelvis should typically go. Generally speaking, when you're doing a landscape, there will be a horizon, even if you don't see it. Unless you're looking straight at the ground or straight up at the sky, there will usually be a horizon. So you can be like, okay, is the horizon low or is it high? And then just making a decision from there. Things like composition, so like that gets into the knowledge and understanding, blah, 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 doing master studies, blah, blah, blah. But if you know that you want to have something that is the center of attention, then you know to have contrast around that thing, right? So maybe the object is dark and it is surrounded by light things, and then there's other dark stuff on the edges. So that's like, again, breaking it down into the simplest possible shapes and then figuring out what that flow is that you actually want to get out of it. So if, for example, if you're drawing a building, buildings are typically going to be really, really structural in nature, unless, and that unless is the important part, because if you're doing an abandoned shack in the woods, chances are there's going to be pieces that are like missing or fallen over, it's going to be overgrown. So you can gesture that by just drawing a box that isn't a perfect box, right? Like that's simplified down that much of just like, okay, it's a box that's a little crooked. And then if you don't like that box, you can make another box. Yeah. Hopefully that helped. Yes.
So I wanted to ask if you got any advice on like drawing figures based on line of action, because a problem I've kind of struggled with, like I can never do line of action because then I draw the head, but then I draw the head too big or something, and now I have to adjust the line of action to proportionally fit the figure in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the question is like getting things proportional and to fit on the page when working from like a line of action or a gesture line.
Yeah.
The best way that I can the best advice I have for that is honestly to not think of the gesture line as the first thing that you put down. It can be, and it's really useful. But like if you have somebody that is like standing still, the gesture line is going to be like that, right? If you have a character that is like flying through the air, maybe it's like that. similar to the way that I was separating out the page with like the top line and bottom line and then figuring out roughly where the middle is. A lot of times the useful way to do that is to be like, okay, if this line is the entire body, the direction that the entire body is moving, you can break up that line the same way that you would the page. So I can be like, okay, the head is here, the pelvis is here, the feet are here. And that way, you know because you haven't started on the head yet, you know where the head is going to go because you've already kind of defined those like endpoints, if you will.
Yeah. So something to add on to that, like to adding into the top half of the line, I kind of struggle with where to put the head. Like, I mean, obviously gonna be at the top.
Yes.
But, like,
Yeah, and where to put the head and how large to put the head is something that basically just requires drawing characters a bunch. So again, tracing, that's totally fine. Like you can literally go to a gesture website, grab a photo from the gesture website, and trace it. And then just afterwards, like I said, take notes. So like if I was to trace a character, I can be like, okay, how close is the head? Can I draw this now without tracing it next to the one that I just did? Because yeah, proportions, generally speaking, come more from practicing proportions than it does from intuitively knowing where to put things on that line. Because, you know, let's say that you're drawing a character in perspective, right? Maybe that character's head is really big because they're in perspective, so then everything is small behind it. So that's why it's hard to give like a concrete answer of like how to know how big the head is going to be, if that makes sense, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So is it better to do the time situation with the same reference or with multiple different references? You can do both. I used a bunch of different ones. One, to showcase the stuff that TrueRef has, but also two, because it means that you don't come in with preconceptions about what you're going to draw. A lot of times what these challenges are trying to teach you is to observe and consume the information also quickly, rather than just drawing it quickly. Because if you can interpret what you need from that photo in the same amount of time that you have to draw the photo, so like if you're working from the same reference 5 times in a row, if you do it for 5 minutes first and then you do it for 30 seconds later, well, you've already looked at it for that combined total, which is useful sometimes. Like that is good if you're planning to draw the same character a lot. But for learning the skill of observation and life drawing and gestures and stuff like that, it's usually more helpful to not use the same thing every time. All right.
So, question for this is more technical with respect to gesture drawing. But what kind of concepts do you keep in mind, or do you find the most important, right, when you're say trying to capture a pose in 15 seconds?
Oh yeah. So when trying to capture a pose in 15 seconds, what do I think are the important details that I need to get down?
Like center of gravity.
Yeah. So I personally don't worry a lot about center of gravity, and that's just me. I don't find that it's particularly helpful because, especially when you're working with things that are in motion, the center of gravity is not in any particular spot anyway, or it can be occluded by a bunch of stuff. So usually when it comes to poses, the things that I care about, and this gets into why gesture is different from figure drawing as well, because gesture is more about how something feels rather than how it looks, is usually the point is to exaggerate the pose.
Yes.
Boop, 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 boop. So if I was to use this one as an example, I know that she's holding a staff, right? That is important. So maybe I will draw a line for the staff. And then I know that everything else comes from that staff because that's like a focal point of the character. It's also something that she's physically interacting with 3 different parts of her body. She's got one hand up here, one hand down here, and then her foot is touching it down here.
So what the pose is all about.
Yeah, so that's what I mean is figuring out what you think is important is kind of dependent on what the pose is in the first place. Because if somebody's holding swords, chances are the swords are important, right? If somebody's, yeah, like if somebody's running, chances are you care more about the pose of their legs and their feet than you do about their expression. But maybe somebody is like crying and they're falling backwards, like then you probably care more about their face and their upper body, because those are the things that are non-neutral.
So it's like a new problem every time.
Yeah. And that's why again, like that observational skill of like figuring out what you think is important is more important than knowing what's important. Because if you go into something expecting, like if you're like, oh, I have to figure out what the hand pose is every single time, then you're always going to look at the hands, even if the hands are hidden. But the hands, like if a hand is behind the back, why are you drawing a hand? Right? Like that is no longer an important piece of information because it's not there in the first place. So that's why it's very much dependent per image, per what you're drawing. Because if you know that something isn't there, then focusing on it is kind of pointless. Whereas if you know something like this staff, for example, if this staff was just leaning against the wall, maybe I don't care about it, maybe I don't draw it, because I can just add it in later. It's just a staff, right? But because it's interacting with the character and with her pose, it becomes important.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Question? Or just waving?
No, just waiting to say I.
Just waving.
So I do. So you said your teacher went from more time to less time. What would sort of be the, maybe not benefits, not the best way to put it, but the intention of going from less time to more time in gesture drawing?
Yeah, so the reason why you would do the opposite direction with gesture drawing, where you do more time the longer you go, is because it's basically treating gesture as a warm-up for figure drawing. Usually that is kind of the difference. Usually gesture is treated as a warm-up rather than as the thing that you're doing. Which means that chances are you're doing a gesture so that you can then stare at it. Like you'll do it 30 seconds, kind of like what the question was earlier from Zaz about like, why would you not use the same photo, right? A lot of times you will use the same photo because you will do a 30-second gesture for that photo, and then you'll spend 10 minutes cleaning up that gesture and turning it into a figure drawing. And that at that point, you're worried more about getting the proportions adjusted, anatomy correct, lighting, all of the other stuff. So that's kind of where you'd go in the reverse time order, is that you'd take that gesture that you had done and then extrapolate on it, rather than learning how to make a gesture itself faster. All right, I think that seems like it's it for questions. Yippee. And I press stop recording.